Okay, insert what I said about Mother Teresa right here. Sorry, okay. All right, how to be emotional, right? I already talked about how to be concrete. We've got to be emotional here.
Will you fight?
Sorry. Go.
Will you fight? No! We will run! And we will live.
Shame on you.
This could be the greatest night of our lives. But you're gonna let it be the worst.
And I guarantee a week won't go by in your life you won't regret walking out, letting them get the best of you.
Well, I'm not going home.
We've got too far!
And I'm gonna stay right here and fight for this lost cause.
A day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
I'm not saying it's gonna be easy.
You're gonna work harder than you ever worked before.
But that's fine, we'll just get tougher with it.
If a person grits his teeth and shows real determination,
failure is not an option.
That's how winning is done. Believe me when I say
We can break this army here.
And win just one for the Gipper.
But I say to you, what every warrior has known since the beginning of time.
you've got to get mad.
I mean plumb mad dog mean.
If you would be free men, then you must
Fight to fulfill that promise. Let us
Cut out their living guts.
1 inch at a time.
And they will know what we can do!
Let no man forget how menacing we are. We are lions.
You're like a big bear, man.
This is your time.
Seize the day.
Never surrender.
victory or death.
That's the Chicago way.
Who's with me?
Clap! Clap! Don't let him die! Clap!
All right.
Let's fly.
And gentlemen in England now abed shall
No, my name is the Lord. When I tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our Independence Day.
Why do we love those movies? Why does that touch us somewhere? Because that is tapping into that human emotion that all judges have. You don't walk into a debate round and all of a sudden you're like in a sci-fi movie and I have no emotion now, right? No, people are always going to have that side of them, right? Some people more than others. We all have those friends, okay? But no, I'm just kidding. So everybody is emotional, and what you need to do is tap into that, all right? I'm not saying manipulate people. I'm just saying if you're debating something and you happen to have a point that can really hit close to home emotionally, you need to use that because that's how you're going to be persuasive, all right? It's not very persuasive to just give big statistics about there are people starving in Africa. There's this many people starving in Africa. That's not persuasive. It's really persuasive if you use a personal story and explain that. So here's an example, and this comes back from that book that I showed you earlier, Made to Stick. And this was a study they did asking people to give donations for starving children in Africa. All right, and what they did is they separated people into two groups. In one group, they gave them like a flyer, and the flyer had all these big numbers, all these statistics on it, and graphs and things like this. All right, and they saw, okay, there's all these people starving in sub-Saharan Africa, and then afterwards they said, you know, would you mind giving $5 to help these people? Okay, all right. The second group, they gave a letter, and the letter talked about a particular girl named Rokia. And she lives in Malawi, and she doesn't know when her next meal is going to be. And would you mind giving $5, you know, to help Rokia and her friends in Africa? All right. So, and how do you think that measured up? Well, the people who read about the stories ended up donating twice as much as those who read just the mathematical facts. Twice as much. And why is that? That's because it just taps into who we are. If we can relate to it, then we're more likely to be persuaded by it. All right. So here's another study. And this was done by a professor at Stanford. And what he did is he gave his students an assignment. He said, all right, I want you guys to all give speeches about nonviolent crime. And they're like, all right, we can do this. And everybody went home. They wrote the speech. They came back the next week. And the entire class gave the speeches, okay? And some people were really good speakers, you know, probably in forensics. And other people, the English wasn't their first language. But everybody did it. And afterwards, he played some funny videos, and they thought class was going to be over. Little did they know the experiment had only just begun. So 10 minutes later, he calls them back and he says, all right, who can remember a statistic that we just heard? Okay, go ahead. Only 5%, so only about 5 out of the class of around 100 could remember a statistic that one of their classmates just 10 minutes earlier had given. But he said, who can remember a story? And over half of them, 63%, could remember a story that one of their classmates had told. All right, and to this day, I'm sure many of us remember stories that were told in debate rounds or speeches that we watched. And those stories are so memorable because they are taking that argument and they're putting it into human form. All right. So all of this to say, using stories makes you more persuasive. Like it or not, it does. So here's another thing that I've just found too interesting not to include. This is all about your frame of mind, all right? And like I said, when you walk into a debate round, you don't automatically change into a robot, all right? But here's something really interesting. If you're thinking in the frame of mind that's mathematical, this is another part of the study. They asked people math questions, and they had them do like long division and stuff. And then they said, okay, would you mind donating? By the way, we have this other cause. Would you mind donating to our cause? And people who were doing the math questions were 40% less likely to donate, all right? And then some people, they asked emotional questions, and they said, you know, what do you think of when you think of a baby? Or they said, what kind of things inspire you? And those people were 60% more likely to donate. And so when you talk about a case, let's say you're trying to save lives. Let's say you have the fortune of presenting a case that's really, if it were enacted, would help real people. That's fantastic. When you walk into the debate round, you should be passionate about that, and you should not be afraid to say, Judge, with my plan, real lives are going to be changed. There will be children in Africa or children in the Middle East that will have their next meal provided, and that's only as a direct result of that affirmative ballot today. So when I say be a debater, not a debate bot, that means don't be afraid to tap into the emotions there. Do I have something after this? Yes. Okay, so here's 3 quick ways to be more emotional in a debate round. The first one is avoid those overly scholastic words, all right? And by that I mean, say we've all debated about war, right? So some people might say, if we get into a nuclear exchange with Russia, this would be highly detrimental to human life. Therefore, you must reject this policy. Okay, highly detrimental to human life? Really? Really? But it can sound really good in your head until you say it. Okay, so we've all done that. But what I'm saying is avoid those type of words. If you're talking about something real, just say, thousands of lives will be prematurely ended if we do not stop this drone program or something like that. All right, and you just got to bring that back to the real lives. Secondly, you got to help the judge sympathize by telling stories. Okay, real life stories. This is a great thing to take from your evidence. So look for those examples that your authors and your sources give, and use those as your opening quotes. So use those as your intros and conclusions. And then bring that story back in your next speech. Say, remember we talked about Susie, whose life was ended prematurely because she didn't have the right to bear arms. Judge, we want to prevent that from happening. So you tie that back in. And thirdly, impact it with what's in it for you. You guys have probably heard that phrase. It's a marketing kind of a phrase. What's in it for you? So if your case is going to create cheaper gasoline, maybe you're drilling in Anwar or Texas or offshore drilling, and it's going to help regular people pay less when they fill up their tanks, use that to your advantage. So say, Judge, with our plan, you're going to be spending less every month on gas. You're going to spend less when you fill up your truck at the gas station because we're going to reduce that dependence on foreign oil and take advantage of what we have here. So tell them what's in it for them. Okay, this is the big caveat that I must give because a lot of times people get really excited. And how many of you have been in a debate round where somebody had a pity party on the other side of the table? Yes, okay, we've all done it, all right? I have to tell my favorite example of this, though. This is a round that I was watching, I believe, and Isaiah was debating. And the girl he was debating against, it was something about school lunches or, I don't know, programs, anyway, helping children. And the girl got on in front of the judge like this, and then she got down on her knees and she said, Judge, for the children, you must pass this plan, for the children. All right, and that is taking it a bit too far, okay? So we can't do that. We're not saying that, and we're also not saying that you should just find one crazy story and manipulate your judge into voting for you. You've got to make sure, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this in other lectures and everything, but really what we want you to do is be be serious about your responsibility as a speaker. You have your platform, and you have a responsibility to your audience and before God to tell the audience what is true. All right? So I am not telling you to manipulate your audience just because you can. All right? And that would make you what's called a sophist. Did Isaiah talk about that? If you're a sophist, then that means you don't really believe what you're saying. You're just trying to manipulate people into voting for you. All right? And that's not something that's respectable to do. Yeah. Okay, so in the back he says we need debates. He doesn't agree with what he's saying in the round most of the time. And I would say, personally, I don't remember a time when I didn't believe what I was saying in a debate round. We as Ethos believe that you can find something to say that you can believe in. Because otherwise, you're not going to be persuasive. If the judge sees in your eyes that you don't believe what you're saying, why should they care if you don't even care? So we would challenge you, if you can't find a case you believe in, to keep looking. And if you face a case that you feel like, oh man, that's a really good idea, instead of just sitting there like, oh, I can't really say anything without going against my beliefs, come up with a counter plan or come up with a reason why they don't go far enough. You know, they want to help starving people in Africa. Why limit it to Africa? We're going to counterplan and we're going to do it in the whole world, whatever that great idea is. So you should never be placed in a position where you have to argue something that you don't feel okay with believing. That's my position. Definitely there's other perspectives on it, and we can definitely talk about those over lunch or dinner. All right, let's keep going. On this, I just want to go to the last fifth of it. We're going to watch a commercial, right? Yeah. Yep. Okay. Steve Jobs, rest in peace. He's going to show us a really cool commercial. And he's going to show us a commercial that taps into the emotions of the viewers.
And it is what we are about. It touches the soul of this country. So I'm going to go ahead and roll it, and I hope that you feel the same way about us.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them. Because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
All right. So the ability to communicate ideas is a powerful, powerful tool. Use it for good. All right. We're going to take a 5-minute break.